always be opportunities to make money, but you're going to have to be smart. You're going to have to work incredibly hard because it's going to be hugely competitive, but there will still be an economy. It just won't be as big as it was. And if you've got an idea, if you've got an opportunity, then grab it with both arms, but by all means do not continue to believe that what has happened is going to be, because we're reversing big time.
Let's talk about the British Curry House, because apparently there's new hope for the future of the British Curry House. Young Asians reluctant to join the industry. Many restaurants have struggled to get staff from abroad because of the government's immigration rules, but a special project to train budding chefs from the Bangladeshi community is proving to be a massive success in Luton and in Flitwick, which is great news. But I think what worries me about this story, you may have a different view, what worries me is that some young British people simply don't want to work, albeit in a tough industry, it would seem. A job surely is a job, Steve Baker.
Well, it's difficult, isn't it? Again, it's back to the old idea that it's almost a spin-off from consumerism, that some of these youngsters today, and I've got children as well, I'm not saying my kids are like this, but they think they have a right, things should be provided for them. They don't understand the need for a work ethic to go out and earn it, and to a certain extent we've created a subculture, and once you've created that subculture you will not get rid of it.
I mean, working in a restaurant is a very tough industry, but I'm thinking, I mean, maybe I'm lucky because I've been fortunate in my career, but I started off in the world of advertising earning very, very little, and it was like take it or leave it. I don't think that has really changed, Mike Niles.
Well, no, I mean, we do a lot of work with schools. Part of what Winter does is we go into schools and we do enterprise training and skills training with young people. And we were at a school in Watford for a week recently, which was an interesting week. But one of the things we did was CV and interview techniques to help, and took them through a process. And I think they have a lack of realisation of what work is. That step between education and the workplace is massive now, and they don't get it. And
I mean, schools are never really going to prepare children and young adults for that.
When I started, I mean, I'm not terribly old. I left school in 1989 when I was 18 after my A-levels, and I was fortunate, 1989, walked straight into a job. But I walked straight into that job with a learned ethic that you go in and work your tail off to earn your keep. I think what has happened with the generation of children that are coming is that they haven't got that same sense of going out there and working. Things have been handed to them a little bit because there has been a lot of money around and they're used to it. There are kids out there, great kids. We work with 16-year-olds to 19-year-olds who are wanting to set up their own businesses. They are focused, they are passionate, and they are brilliant. And the kids we dealt with at this school in Watford, once we took them through a full interview process, we took 100 of them through a proper structured day-long interview. The 6 who actually got paid work placements at the end were not the bright sparks. They were not the high educational achievers. They were the ones who had engaged with the process, understood that hard work was necessary, and they got 2-week paid placements during the summer holidays through this process. So I think there are a lot of kids out there who are desperate to work, but at the moment they don't necessarily know how to achieve it. And I think part of the responsibility is as us as parents and as business people is to help these young people understand exactly what is required, so when they do go into the world of work, that it's not a complete shock to them and they know what to expect.
I mean, goodness me, it's hard enough to hang on at the moment, but can you imagine? I can't even begin to imagine what it's like for 18, 19, 20-year-old starting off and thinking, I want to try and make a go of it. I want to find a place for myself in this world.
They're going to have to be really smart. There are hundreds of thousands of graduates without the kind of occupation they expected to have, and there's going to be another 100,000 of those in a year's time. Youngsters, indeed anyone who is no longer in work, they're going to have to be really smart. They're going to have a lot of nous, call in whatever favour they can, find out who can get them training, who can get them work, who can give them an opportunity, and just keep asking the question until they get it.
Hustle.
Absolutely.
There's something that Bill Gates said to me. He'd had his 11 tips of fairness, and he said that your burger flipping isn't beneath you. Your parents had a different word for burger flipping. It was opportunity. And there's a great 11 ticks of world. Well, life isn't fair. Get used to it. Kind of last one is be nice to nerds because one day you'll end up working for them. But that's exactly it. It is, like you say, I mean, an opportunity is an opportunity. Working in a restaurant or a McDonald's or anything may not be the way you envisaged your life, but it gets you there. It gets you working. And the more you work, generally the easier it is to get work, if you've got that history, if you've got a CV that is full, whether it is of paid work, voluntary work, all of that kind of stuff, it gives you transferable skills, it gives you power and presence in the workplace. And that's what's not happening at the moment, unfortunately, with young people.
This is Three Counties Drive Time.
And Bucks travel.
BBC Three Counties Radio.
Hello to you on the northbound M1. Still pretty heavy after the earlier broken down vehicle. That was just before 13 at Bedford. On the northbound M1, it's slowing up around 11 at Dunstable, so still recovering but not doing so bad now. Things are still starting to look a bit better. A1M northbound around 6 at One Garden City, also running a lot better now. In High Wycombe, the Abbey Way flyover also running a lot nicer. In Dunstable Town Centre, though, still a bit sticky at the West Street lights, and also in Stevenage, Hitchin Road, still busy into town from the A1M Junction 7. Paul Murphy, BBC Three Counties Radio.
Paul, thank you. More from Paul just before 7 tonight.
If it's safe and legal, tell us what's happening on the roads where you are.
08459 455 555.
Every Monday to Saturday from 12, Nick Coffer.
And I'm joined by Peter Blackett from Umbanda. What are you doing here today? We're kicking off the celebrations for the Paralympic flame going through Aylesbury today. I am entertaining about 50-odd people at the moment. Yeah, including about 30 kids, each of whom had a drum. You're brave.
Nick Coffer.
What is it about the drums and rhythms that's so important, that's so infectious? Oh, it's massively important to the human condition. It's something that everyone can do. It's a great leveller. I tried a violin project, 50 violins, disaster. At the moment, we're just having fun, and it's something we don't do that well in this society, this community music making, and this is exactly what we're doing now.
Nick Coffer, Monday to Saturday from 12 on BBC Three Counties Radio. Roberto Perrone.
BBC Three Counties Radio.
13 minutes to 7. My guest tonight, Steve Baker from Aylesbury Independent Financial Advisor. You can follow Steve Baker at Quinn Boy. Jonathan Davis, you can follow Jonathan on Twitter. He's also an Independent Financial Advisor at Jonathan Davis WM. And from the Winter Group, Mike Niles. Mike, you can follow Mike on Twitter at MikeN1971. There was a moment last night at the Paralympics when George Osborne was introduced to the stadium, and people started booing. He seemed genuinely surprised that people don't like him. Were you surprised, Steve Baker?
I didn't actually see the incident, I have to be truthful with you, but when are politicians ever really liked?
Especially Chancellor Exchequer.
Well, actually, on the same evening, Gordon and Sarah Brown were cheered to the rafters.
Were they? Well, just...
turn around in fortunes.
Sad indictment of the British public, isn't it?
George Osborne, of course, is still the Chancellor, even after the reshuffle. He's been laying out his vision for the future of Britain. He was talking to Andrew Marr on Sunday. I'll just play back a clip of what he said, because it's laying out his idea of how perhaps to get the economy moving again.
What about new roads? What about new railways? Are you going to be able to speed those up?
Yeah, well, I would like to see the speeding up of the delivery of those things. Absolutely. Look, I think it is... Of course.
So you're prepared to open the coffers a bit to get infrastructure spending now?
I'm prepared to, first of all, underwrite big infrastructure projects. That is something no Chancellor has done before me.
Well, and in the past, under your Chancellorship, infrastructure spending has been cut.
No, infrastructure spending, compared to the plans we inherited from the Labour Party, is actually higher, right? Yeah. But what I would say is I am as frustrated as anyone that it takes so long to get a road built in this country, so long to do the rail improvements we want to see. We've tried to make that easy with changes to planning. You'll see in the next couple of weeks legislation to speed up the process of development, of course to allow for legitimate objection, but legitimate objection can be heard and acknowledged and adjudicated on in less than a couple of years. We don't need to take so long. And, what I think we've found...
So you're going to speed up planning.
What we found if building a new runway was simple, it would have been done over the last 20 years. It hasn't. If building a new nuclear power station had been simple, we would have seen one open in the last 20 years.
You have to find ways, you're saying, of doing this more quickly, and you're going to radically simplify the planning system.
Look, I think we have to up the tempo of development and activity in this country. And I think, look, all of us as a nation have to come to terms with a very simple fact. Not only have we had a difficult 5 years as an economy, but actually this country faces a big question about its future in the world, and whether it's about our school system, our welfare system, or about the kind of infrastructure we have we got the appetite as a country to make the changes necessary to provide the jobs, not just today, but for our children and grandchildren? Are we actually prepared to make sure Britain can earn its way in the world over the next 20, 50 years?
Of course, the Chancellor's Checker, George Osborne, the multi-millionaire George Osborne. Is he right, Steve Baker? Can we spend? Can we build our way out of trouble?
I don't know if we can't spend our way out of trouble, and spending too much is partially responsible for getting you into trouble. I would like to see more money spent internally on improving our infrastructure, and it's a golden opportunity to possibly create more employment by spending the money within the shores of this country instead of trying to get it out and abroad.
Mike?
Yeah, I mean, the building industry is very important. I mean, we get a lot of people, because the building industry often, they need part-time casual workers, and a lot of the people who come to us are from that kind of an industry and looking for opportunities, bricklayers, plasterers, those kinds of things. So, again, what you're doing by increasing that kind of activity is potentially giving more employment, more work to people who are struggling at the moment. The more they earn, the more money they have to put back into the economy or stick under their mattress for a rainy day, whichever is the most sensible way of doing it at the moment. But yeah, it is about increasing industry, increases jobs for people, and jobs is a good thing for the economy because then people start spending confidently again.
And you start taking more tax.
Yes. You mentioned the P word, plasterers. If I was 18 right now and I'm looking for a career, I'm thinking, I want to hook up with a plasterer and say, I want to work with you for nothing, for 3 months, 6 months, to learn your skills. But I don't know if kids get that at the moment.
They don't. I mean, I don't know a huge amount about it, but I know certainly in terms of apprenticeships, that's a big deal at the moment. I think there's been a lot of look at getting people into apprenticeships, which is, it's not an internship. They do get a very basic salary to do it. But these kinds of skills are the ones that perhaps young people aren't looking at now. These wonderful things like, plastering. I worked with a great young man a few years ago in a project I did in Luton, and he was going through the enterpriseship. He was, he was a 17-year-old lad. He was very sharp. He was doing a bricklaying course, and he was working his tail off because what he wanted to do was to be able to provide for himself and ultimately his family.
Which is what it all comes down to.
And these skills are, they're very important to everyone, and they're the kinds of things that actually are diluted a bit. Because people leave school today thinking they're going to be the vice president of a company, or they're going to be a website designer or whatever, and we're actually losing the core of some of these skills.
You don't know how many website designers I know who are looking for work.
Yes, there's quite a few out there at the moment, I know.
Jonathan Davies, we heard that's from the Andrew Marr programme on Sunday, the Chancellor of the Exchequer, building projects, he's going to do this, he's going to do that. Do you believe him?
Well, because Andrew Marr, first of all, is a well-known champagne socialist, so naturally he's going to come from that angle. But the reality is there's no difference between these politicians. The Tories or the Labour previously, they pretend on these programmes and Question Time or whatever, they pretend there is a Grand Canyon of differences between them. The reality is there's a wafer-thin crack, because on the major issues, all these politicians agree. Totally. They agree we should stay in Europe. They agree that we should borrow a lot of money and bail out the banks. They agree on high taxes. They may talk about austerity, but they don't do it. Osborne is now spending more than Ed Balls, the Shadow Chancellor, wanted to spend. That's quite an achievement. Do I believe the politician? I never believe politicians, because they say one thing and do another.
It's come out to 6.5 minutes to 7 o'clock. The number of parking attendants hired by council has risen by nearly 6% since 2008, according to new figures. During the same period, 17% of councils have reduced free parking. I can go into the facts and figures here, but basically they are hiring more parking attendants, stroke civil enforcement officers, stroke parking wardens, and reducing the parking spaces available that you can park for free. Over the last 12 months, 10% of drivers have received parking fines, with those paying out between £96, in some cases £340, you name the figures, they make it up as they go along. Are councils using motorists as so-called cash cows, Steve Baker?
Well, of course, yeah, they see it as an easy way to make a quick buck. They're just milking it. And actually, it's a shocking attack upon the high street. What they should be doing is working the other way and encouraging people to come back and spend on the high street.
They don't get it. Councils do not get it.
They don't. And they've almost worked in partnership with these large organisations like Tesco's. They've got these huge out-of-town stores with car parking facilities, and it's been to the detriment of the traditional high street, and I think it's tragic.
Jonathan Davis.
Councils don't know what they're doing. Luton, for example, has got debts of how much?
I don't even want to name it publicly because it is such an eye-watering figure. We have spoken to the chief executive this afternoon who blamed me for the council losing £400,000 for staging 2 concerts over the summer, which they didn't sell many tickets for.
They have all these vanity projects, and just like national politicians, they pretend that they're doing something to help. What they're doing is just increasing directly or indirectly taxes on those of us who can pay taxes, such as car users, council taxes, whatever, and it goes into the coffers of the politicians, local or national, to pay for their pet projects and also to pay for their empires, their staff and their manager and their chief executive salaries. It's a nightmare. We are paying these people fortunes, and what are we getting in return? Poor service, poor qualities, closure of libraries, closure of social care, and instead big empires with big salaries.
Mike Niles.
From my perspective, I mean, the thing that you notice how empty towns are. I started work 23 years ago, in Bedford, in W.H. Smith, and you could not move for people in your lunch hour. I didn't go out at lunch hour. And I left the centre of Bedford for a long time, didn't work in the centre of Bedford, and I returned. When I started working for Winter, we had an office in the centre of Bedford, and it was a ghost town. Absolute ghost town. And I think part of that is this whole issue of parking. They've done it at Milton Keynes recently. There used to be a raft of free parking in Milton Keynes. If you were prepared to walk 3/4 of a mile, which I was, kids didn't like it, but I was, it's free. And we used to have a competition so you could see the free space first. They're all now the 15p, 30p an hour parking spaces. And when you think about, 7 out of 11 shops empty in the centre of Dunstable or something like that, if you want to encourage people back into a town, you've got to make it attractive to them. And the fact that, it's £1.10 for an hour in Bedford if you park at the multi-star is there. I have no idea what it is here in Luton. I don't tend to park in Luton. It's not going to get people back in. And no matter how many pop-up shops you do or how many rate reviews you do to attract businesses back into the towns, if you can't get the customers back in the town to kind of spend money in those shops, it's not going to happen. And you're quite right, they will go to these massive out-of-town places.
Let's just end with another story that's surfacing today. Tropical fruit supplier Fifes has warned of higher banana and pineapple prices due to rising fuel costs and adverse exchange rates. Of course, the weather situation around the world has not been very good. Extreme weather, violent weather. How much will you pay for a banana in the coming months, Steve Baker?
I don't know how much I'm going to have to pay, but from a purely selfish point of view, this went straight to my heart because I'm a health fanatic. I've got boys who are big into training, and we buy a lot of pineapples and we buy a lot of bananas because they're really good for
I don't even know what
training.
they cost. And to my shame, I know you can get a pineapple for £1. I don't know what a banana costs. I think it's a lost leader in most supermarkets.
It is, yeah.
In Aldi, they're 6-9 for a bunch.
I'll just write that down.
There you go.
Be careful, my wife will start charging me for a banana cake.
I think that's the least of our worries. Gentlemen, thank you. Where can people find you on Twitter, Mike?
Well, the @TheWenter Group for Winter, and for me it's Mike N1971.
Steve Baker.
Quinn Boy.
And Jonathan Davis.
Jonathan Davis, WM.
Thank you, gentlemen. This has been Three Counties Drive.
And Bucks travel.
BBC Three Counties Radio.
On the northbound M1, still pretty heavy after the earlier broken down vehicle just before 13 for Bedford. However, on the northbound carriageway, we've now got a lane closed on the exit at Junction 11 at Dunstable with another broken down car. Traffic there is coping well, but on the main M1, it is still slowing on the northbound side up near 13. All the lanes are open though. Elsewhere, not doing so bad now. Still a bit busy in Dunstable around the West Street lights, but it is easing off quite a lot. Also in Roxton, still a bit busy at Blackcat, but again starting to ease off with the end of the rush hour. In Watford, still slow at the Dome roundabout, but in Milton Keynes Standing Way, starting to run a lot better as you head through town. Paul Murphy, BBC Three Counties Radio.
Paul, thank you. Thank you for your company. Absolutely fantastic. Thank you to my fantastic panel tonight. Drive Time back tomorrow afternoon from 3 o'clock. Don't forget you can join us and follow us on Facebook and Twitter at Drive with Rob. Tomorrow night from 6 we're talking family and lifestyle issues, and you can text us throughout the day on 81333. Start your text 3CR. Make sure you stay tuned to Three Counties Radio. Have a great evening.